The Carvosian Empire had not been solvent for 3 decades. Its golden towers cast shadows over empty treasuries.
The reserve credits will last 4 months after that. The military pensions stop. The food subsidies stop. If we sell governance shares to the humans, they pay today. The nobility expels them tomorrow. It's elegant.
The offer crossed light years. 51% of imperial sovereignty, price 80 trillion Terran credits. On Earth, Treasury Secretary Susan Chen read the communique at her standing desk. She did not sit down.
They're offering us a controlling stake. Get me the legal annex. I want to see the penalty clauses. 80 trillion credits for a ready-made interstellar empire. The board would fire me if I hesitated.
11 minutes after receipt, the Terran Treasury transmitted acceptance and transferred the full amount. The Terran cruiser shifted orbit. Its shadow swallowed the Imperial Palace, a new owner inspecting its asset.
That was too fast. They were supposed to deliberate for months. Something is wrong. The humans moved with unseemly haste. It changes nothing. The nobility will grind them down. I will smile at the welcoming ceremony and wait for their inevitable collapse.
In a sterile Earth briefing room, Secretary Chen laid out the mission for consultant Marcus Adebayo.
The Empire is a corporate husk. Our 51% gives us board control. Treat this like a hostile takeover. Your team leaves tonight. No soldiers, no weapons, just laptops and contracts.
The shuttle departed within the hour, carrying 12 consultants and a cargo hold of financial models. 18 hours later, the shuttle settled on the Carvosian spaceport. The welcome was glacial.
The Carvosian Empire welcomes its new shareholders. We trust your investment will be productive.
The ledgers must look like a crime scene. This budget has entire sectors marked miscellaneous. It's insolvent.
Marcus requested the imperial tax registries. The chief clerk sealed them behind a crystal barrier with deliberate slowness.
You're violating the shareholder audit mandate. I'm calling Earth.
Within minutes, Secretary Chen's holographic presence filled the chamber. She did not greet.
Regent Robert, Article 18.9, full access. Refuse and I declare default. Your dynasty loses everything.
You would end an 11,000-year dynasty over ledgers?
I'd liquidate it for parts. Open the books.
The records were a monument to fraud. Noble houses paid an effective tax rate of less than 4%.
We're replacing the entire system. Universal flat tax, 0 exemptions.
Duchess Valara received the draft proposal that night. The temperature in the noble's chamber dropped.
He taxes us like commoners? This human must be removed from power, permanently.
The tax code was overhauled in a single session. Construction crews broke ground on 3 planetary transit lines the next week.
The Treasury was bleeding into 3 unwinnable wars. We're pulling the plug.
The funding vanished. Within 2 months, the warlords had no choice but to accept the ceasefire terms. In the common districts, families received food parcels stamped with the new government seal. The seal meant the old hunger was ending.
74% approval. The lower classes are embracing the humans. I have miscalculated.
He scoured the purchase contract through the night. Every clause was watertight. The humans had built no exits.
They dissolve our treasury, then declare peace as though they are saviors. I will not watch this dynasty become a human subsidiary.
Encrypted calls lit the noble networks. Valara's argument was simple. The shareholders had to be removed by force. Terran intelligence intercepted the chatter within hours. The transcript landed on Susan Chen's desk before dawn.
No troops. If we send soldiers, we become the occupiers they accuse us of being. Let the market decide.
6 months passed. The Terran cruiser became a permanent fixture in the sky, and approval ratings hit 89%.
89%. The dynasty has less support than a human spreadsheet.
The regent has lost his nerve. We will reclaim our birthright by force.
Plasma sidearms were distributed to the loyal houses. The signal would be a march on the administration sector.
Shouldn't we deploy the Civil Guard at least?
No. If we interfere, we validate their claim. Let the people choose who protects them.
On a gray morning, the nobles donned ancestral armor and marched down the ceremonial boulevard. They expected the commoners to scatter. Instead, the streets were lined with silent, unmoving crowds.
Why aren't they bowing?
The procession reached the Grand Plaza, where a much larger crowd had already gathered not to join the nobles, but to block them.
Turn back, my lady. This avenue belongs to the people now.
You commoners stand aside. You are shielding alien usurpers.
We shield the people who fixed our roads and ended our wars. You never did either.
The crowd linked arms, forming a living wall. Their silence was louder than any war cry. The nobles' plasma sidearms hung at their belts. They could not fire into their own kin without damning themselves.
Even if I command them to fire, they will not. I have already lost.
One by one, the noble houses lowered their banners and peeled away from the march.
The dynasty ends today, not by conquest, by irrelevance.
Robert did not call his guard. He did not shout orders. He simply stood and watched his class dissolve. In the plaza, Yoren lifted a single fist. The crowd roared, not for blood, but for a future they had chosen. In the dust-choked legal library, Robert and Valara hunched over the original purchase contract, searching for a single escape clause.
If we claim hostile economic coercion, the agreement may be voidable. The archives mention precedent.
File the notice immediately. We will bury them in litigation for a century.
The formal notice of breach arrived on Earth's diplomatic channel, dense with archaic legal language. Susan's smile was almost imperceptible.
They're citing coercion. Deploy Section 18.9, the penalty accelerator. Any challenge automatically transfers 15% more assets.
The Terran legal team transmitted the response in under an hour. It was not a denial. It was a countersuit that threatened to liquidate the nobility's remaining estates. In the library, the Imperial Legal Council finished scanning the Terran reply. The tablet slipped from his fingers.
We thought we were selling governance shares. We were selling the noose they would hang us with.
This is not a contract. It's a trap within a trap.
The legal challenge died there. The nobility had no path through the courts. What remained was something far more dangerous: desperation without options.
The treasury records reveal something worse than waste. These wars were funded by noble houses to justify their emergency powers. They created artificial crises to drain the treasury and keep the population dependent. Millions died to sustain a lie.
The footage cut to the Capitol Square, where the broadcast played on every public screen. A low, visceral groan rose from the crowd.
They called us citizens while sending our children to die for their vaults.
The wars were my brother's legacy. I never knew, or I chose not to know. I have been a fool. A complicit fool.
What you tolerated was not an empire. It was a protection racket with a crown that ends today.
Within hours, the old dynasty was not merely unpopular, it was illegitimate. Even the royal guard shed their insignia.
We want a new charter, a government that answers to shareholders and citizens alike.
The nobility's moral authority had been completely shattered. Now, there was nothing left to negotiate.
I'm calling a special shareholder meeting. The resolution: retire the dynasty and establish an elected administrative sovereign.
The meeting hologram projected across the Capitol. Resolution for the retirement of the Carvosian dynasty. The nobility scrambled to buy minority shares from commoners, hoping to block the vote.
You can't buy our shares. We earned them in blood.
When the market failed, Valara turned to force. She ordered her guards to seal the Grand Hall.
No human enters this chamber until the contract is declared void. Seal the doors.
But a larger crowd had already gathered, commoners and citizens who saw the meeting as their own.
Stand aside. You're in the way of a vote, not a revolution.
The guards, shaken, parted. The human delegation and citizen representatives filed into the Grand Hall.
The resolution is on the table. All votes will be recorded. Let's see where the shareholders stand. The Terran bloc casts 51% in favor. The resolution passes.
The holographic tally surged to 51% and locked. Earth's controlling stake had spoken. Then, one by one, the common shareholders raised their hands. The tally climbed to 57%. A shaft of golden light descended upon the vacant throne, the ancient symbol of rule now empty.
The Carvosian dynasty is retired. The empire now belongs to its shareholders.
In the streets, the roar was deafening. 11,000 years of dynasty ended not with fire, but with a vote.
I sold them a dying empire. They sold it back to my people.
Robert did not rise. He sat, watching the light recede from the throne, a relic in a room that no longer needed him.
I accept the role of administrative sovereign. My first act is to declare term limits, 5 years, non-renewable.
The grand hall erupted into applause, a sound that mixed relief and raw hope. The throne room became a forum. Susan Chen addressed the new assembly, her voice steady over the lingering applause.
The Earth's 51% will be transferred to a Carvosian trust over 20 years, contingent on governance benchmarks. This was never a conquest. It was a bankruptcy restructuring.
The holographic screen behind her flashed the title, First Administrative Empress, Term Limited.
We want a citizens' council, elected without noble blood requirements.
The revenue-sharing clause must be untouchable. No more war slush funds.
In his villa by the sea, Robert began to type a memoir. The first line took hours.
I sold an empire because I couldn't read the fine print. That's the title.
He paused, then wrote the dedication, to Susan Chen, who understood the contract better than I. The administrative empress reviewed the draft constitution. Power was already dispersing. Carvosian GDP doubled in a single quarter. Infrastructure projects sprouted like crops, hospitals, schools, trade corridors.
We're building things that profit the people, not the nobility. The data proves it.
On Earth, a publishing house specializing in alien memoirs received a draft. The title made the editor laugh aloud. A message from the publisher read, "Regent Robert, your manuscript, How I Sold My Empire, is under serious consideration. We wish to offer a standard advance."
They want to print my humiliation, and I want them to.
Susan learned of the memoir offer through intelligence channels. She dictated one instruction.
Clear it. Let the galaxy see what happens when humans audit a legacy institution. It's the best marketing we'll ever buy.
The contract was signed via a holographic courier. Robert Carvosian became a Terran author.
I am now paid to explain my failure. The humans call this consulting.
The first print run sold out in pre-orders. On both planets, readers awaited the confessions of a deposed regent. On Earth, the Senate Subcommittee on Interstellar Ethics summoned Susan Chen to a closed-door hearing. The committee's questions were blunt. Some called the takeover legal piracy.
Every credit was paid. Every clause was public. The Empire was bankrupt, and we bought its debt.
She presented the 20-year trust plan, the first public disclosure of Earth's exit strategy.
We are not colonizers. We are auditors who found a failing operation and fixed it. The shares returned to the people.
The committee deliberated for 6 hours, then voted 7-2 to endorse the administration's actions. The news broadcast carried the verdict live. Senate clears Treasury of misconduct.
They needed to hear that we aren't staying forever. Now the galaxy knows.
The endorsement sent her approval ratings on Earth past 70% for the first time. The memoir sales spiked again, boosted by the hearing's publicity. Robert's confession was now part of the public record. Within a month, How I Sold My Empire topped the Terran bestseller lists. The deposed regent was a literary sensation. Robert appeared on a Terran talk show, seated in a comfortable chair, the host laughing.
I assumed humans would be easy to outmaneuver. I was wrong for 11,000 years in one afternoon. They didn't conquer us. They repaired us. My people have food, peace, and hope. I couldn't deliver that.
The studio audience gave him a standing ovation. A villain had become a beloved cautionary uncle.
He's selling our narrative better than any press release. Keep the tour going. He's not a regent anymore. He's a brand ambassador.
The humans gave my empire a future. I gave them a footnote. The better trade, really.
The book signing tour drew lines mixing humans and Carvosians. Robert's pen moved for hours.
I am no longer a ruler. I am a story, and stories are harder to burn than thrones.
1 year after the restructuring, a grand anniversary ceremony was announced. The capital buzzed with final preparations.
Invite Robert to present the ceremonial scepter. It's time he became the face of the transition.
The invitation reached Robert's villa. He read it twice, then stared at the sea for an hour.
They want me to legitimize what I lost. Full circle. I will attend, not as a regent, but as a witness to what my failure made possible.
The day of the ceremony, the capital streets filled with millions. Holographic screens broadcast the event across both worlds.
I never thought I'd see the day a commoner could stand here without bowing.
All systems nominal, both mechanically and politically. Let the old man have his moment.
This ceremony closes a chapter. The next one writes itself.
Robert stood in the wings, scepter in hand, waiting for the cue. The crowd fell silent. Robert walked to center stage, the ancient scepter trembling slightly. He extended it toward Susan with both hands.
I offer this scepter not as a symbol of power, but of trust. We sold you a broken empire. You returned it whole.
You took a risk, Regent. It paid off for your people.
Susan turned to the podium, the scepter now resting beside her. Behind her, a massive hologram ignited.
Effective immediately, the Robert Carvosian Scholarship Fund will allow any child, noble or commoner, to study on Earth. And the Carvosian Sovereign Trust will begin transferring Earth's 51% stake back to your people over 20 years, contingent on democratic benchmarks.
Robert's circlet slipped from his fingers, clattering on the stage, his eyes fixed on the holographic timeline.
They were never staying. This was always a rescue mission wrapped in a hostile takeover.
You sold an empire. We bought a future. Now it returns to those who built it.
The crowd erupted, a wave of sound that shook the stage. Robert stood frozen, tears carving paths through the dust on his cheeks.
You gave my people more than I ever did. Thank you for seeing a future in our ruins.
On the stage, the new constitution was unrolled. Joran signed first, then Susan, then Robert.
This ink binds us more than any crown ever did.
The joint flag of Carvos and Earth unfurled above the stage, its new symbol catching the golden light.
My term expires today. Marcus Adebayo will serve as interim CEO until the council elects a permanent successor.
I'll keep the lights on and the ledgers honest. The rest belongs to you.
Susan walked to the shuttle ramp, pausing to look back at the cheering crowd. A Carvosian mother lifted her child to see, as if imprinting the moment. High above, the Terran cruiser's orbit adjusted. Its shadow, once a symbol of dominance, lifted from the palace.
They repaired my empire and then let it go. I never even understood the contract.
Susan Chen's shuttle touched down on Earth beneath a gray, drizzly sky. The Senate awaited her final report.
The Carvosian acquisition generated a 37% return on investment. But the real profit is a stable allied democracy. I recommend the Earth relinquish its remaining shares ahead of schedule. The benchmarks have been met.
The senators rose in a rare standing ovation. Susan Chen resigned her office that afternoon.
I ran a broken empire for 5 years. Now I'll run a garden.
She published a slim memoir, The Accountant's Throne. It was a dry, meticulous explanation of corporate conquest. Robert, from his coastal villa, released a companion volume, Strange Partners, The Story of the Rebuilding. In Terran bookstores, both memoirs sat side by side in the window under a single sign, How to Lose and Win an Empire. Susan spent her retirement in a quiet suburb, reading, gardening, ignoring interview requests. The story of the empire that sold itself would be taught in business schools on 2 worlds for generations. A year later, the Carvosian capital was unrecognizable. Old noble estates had become public parks.
The trade agreement with the outer colonies passes unanimously. We're building, not begging.
Marcus remained as a quiet advisor, his tablet now showing transition checklists, not crisis reports. Duchess Valara walked the barren moon of a distant colony, one bag in her hand, looking back only once. The noble edicts were recycled into data crystals, the old laws dissolving into new information. The Terran cruiser now bore Carvosian markings, a joint vessel on a shared mission.
We were once subjects, now we are partners. That's the real conquest.
Children played in shadowless squares, no memory of the old oppression. The golden towers still stood, but they no longer cast a shadow over empty treasuries. The empire that sold itself had become a democracy that owned its future. A handwritten letter from Robert arrived at her apartment. Susan carried it to the memorial park and sat beneath the bronze statue. My dear Susan, I still cannot read a contract, but I can read what you built. Thank you for making my failure a beginning.
He finally understood. It was never about conquest.
She looked up at the statue, A human and a Carvosian hands clasped in permanent bronze. At the base, the inscription read, "Partnership, not conquest."
That was the strategy from day one.
Above the distant capital, the Terran cruiser was now a memory. Only stars filled the orbit. She folded the letter and placed it on the statue's plinth, a private offering to the quiet morning.
Not a bad footnote for an accountant.
She remained until the sun shifted, the shadowless light falling over the handshake, over the bench, over everything. Years later, at a joint book signing on Earth, Robert sat behind a stack of memoirs, a line of both species before him. A young Carvosian child stepped forward, clutching a copy of How I Sold My Empire.
The child asked, "Do you regret selling the empire?" "I sold one empire and bought a better future for my people. That's a trade I'd make again."
The child smiled, hugged the book, and rejoined a line that stretched out the door across worlds. On Carvos, beneath the handshake statue, another child tugged at her parent's sleeve.
What was the old empire like? The parent knelt. It was a place of shadows. Then someone listened, and the shadows lifted.
The child looked up at the bronze hands, then back at her parent, satisfied. The statue stood in unshadowed sunlight, its plaque polished by countless small fingers. The joint flag of two worlds still flew above the Carvosian capital, catching the first light of dawn. In her quiet apartment, Susan smiled at a framed photo, the handshake statue on the day it was unveiled, a small gesture immortalized. Robert sat on his villa terrace, watching the sea. Beside him, a tablet displayed the cover of his third memoir, Auditing and Atonement.
Strange how a failure became my greatest asset.
Above the capital, the empty sky held no cruiser, no shadow, only the promise of a future the people had purchased themselves. And in a memorial park, the statue's bronze hands still clasped, holding together two worlds that had almost lost each other. The title of this story is not a victory cry, but a lesson written in spreadsheets and trust. As the sun rose over the Carvosian towers, a single line appeared beneath the title. Sometimes the best conquerors are accountants. The account was settled.